I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
We would like to welcome Virginia Sladko to our podcast. She is a DNA expert with the Baltimore City Police Department in Baltimore. Welcome, Virginia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our first question is, in popular culture, DNA is portrayed to be the pinnacle of forensic evidence. Are there instances where, even with DNA evidence, crimes cannot be solved?
Absolutely. Yes. There's plenty of instances. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of that question is sex offenses. Usually you have quite a bit of DNA evidence in cases like that. Unfortunately, it's a he said, she said scenario. We get a lot of sex offenses with great DNA evidence. They end up getting a not guilty or not even going to trial because the he said, she said scenario comes up. And who do you believe? So that's one of the first things that comes into my mind. We have DNA everywhere. Just because there's DNA there, we have to back that up with the investigative process. So I think television has gotten everyone in this idea that if there's DNA, they're going to solve it. You actually have to investigate the crime as well and have other evidence to back up the DNA.
Well, is DNA found as evidence as often as it's portrayed?
I don't know what you might mean by portrayed because I don't watch a lot of the television shows for obvious reasons. I sit here and scream at the television because it's all misconstrued. I would say it's definitely less than what's portrayed. I think most people believe that it's in almost every case, but unfortunately that's not the case. I spoke at a high school in Baltimore this week and I asked the question, is DNA found in almost all criminal investigations? And all of the kids said yes, they said true. I was like, wow, they all believe what they see on TV to be fact. And I think that's the case for most people. I found a statistic that about 5 to 10% of criminal cases actually have probative DNA evidence in them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how often has DNA evidence cleared a previously convicted criminal? We know about Kurt Bloodsworth.
Right. The only place I can really find a good statistic on that is through the Innocence Project. They have a website where you can find a lot of information on that specific topic. And I saw that it's about 350 as of 2017 have been, just based off of DNA evidence, have been released from prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a staggering statistic.
Well, it is. And
It is.
if I'm not mistaken, I have the idea that because DNA testing is so expensive that it could solve more crimes or exonerate more people if they could afford to test the DNA.
Well, that's what the Innocence Project.
Exactly. You're right on. It's all about those private companies helping the falsely accused to get the testing done. I think it's definitely partially money, but it's also time. It takes a lot of time to go back through all of these cases. Think about how many cases you have. I'm thinking of Baltimore City specifically. We have tons of cases every year, and a matter of going back, and it's really like a huge research project to go back through all that. And who do you have do that? We don't have enough people to do that currently to keep up with the current crime. So it's kind of what do we do here? So I think that those Innocence Projects and other entities are really what these people need right now.
Absolutely.
Until government funding comes up with ways to make positions like that in crime labs.
Wow. With the advent of ancestry DNA testing available commercially, what are the privacy issues with these tests? And should the average consumer be concerned about the privacy of their DNA tests?
So this is a huge topic right now. I mean, it's all over the news after that.
Golden
State. Yeah, there's tons of privacy issues. It comes down to where you're putting your DNA in these databases. What databases you're using. Are they public? Are you reading the small print when you're putting your DNA in there? Most of these, like 23andMe and Ancestry.com, they have pretty strict privacy laws. And they tell their consumers what they're doing with the DNA up front. And they're not I don't think any of those two specifically are allowing any police to use them as like a search database. But there are these private companies that are public. And so I don't remember the company that they use out in California. I remember it was a company it was actually based out of Florida. JedMatch, maybe, was it?
Yeah, I think
yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, and then I know there's Parabon is a big one around us. It's in Virginia, and I know a lot of police departments have used them, but those are public. And so basically what it is you get your DNA results from 23andMe or one of those major companies that you download a file to your computer. And people who want to know more about their ancestry, which is generally what they're using that for, can then upload that raw data onto any of these other private companies just to get more information, to have a wider or a broader selection of profiles to search through.
So they don't read the small print, obviously.
Right. So by doing that, they're basically releasing their privacy rights to their profile. And it becomes an issue too, because especially like think about the Golden State Killer, he never put his DNA on anything. So how does that work? Because the family members who put their DNA released their privacy, but he didn't release his.
That's
true. That's another question. And then it becomes the whole, like, do you want to find killers or do you care more about privacy? Right. And so that's a huge ethical issue that's going to be huge here in the near future. As soon as these cases start to go to trial is when it's really going to be questioned.
Right.
Well, it is interesting. And I got in a debate at somebody at work about this, about the fact that she was worried about her privacy. And I said, to be honest with you, if a killer is taken off the streets, that's what I care more about.
Yeah.
Right. I think the masses, the law-abiding citizens, agree with you. It's one of those things, we have the same thing just in our lab alone. When like witnesses or victims don't want to give us their DNA sample to use as comparison in the lab, it raises a red flag. It's like, well, what are you hiding?
Right.
You know? And so law-abiding citizens don't understand that. Like, why are you trying to hide it? If your brother or sister or child is a murderer, wouldn't you want to know? I would.
Some people wouldn't.
Yeah.
Now, ever since the Golden State Killer case, familial DNA testing and results are becoming more and more recognized. Do you see that in the future as becoming the norm?
I think things are definitely going to change in respect to familial searching. It's so up in the air right now because nothing has gone to court. There hasn't been precedent set in court for this topic. There's so many legal issues still to be solved. I think it'll come into play somehow, but I just don't know how yet. Right now, it's not illegal. The people that are searching from the police department that are searching this stuff are actual police officers. I work in the lab. I'm a civilian. Our laboratory is under strict accreditation rules and laws and regulations. And so we can't just find a random website and put someone's DNA profile on that. That would be breaking all of our rules that we're constricted to. So, but the sworn side of things, they don't necessarily have that. They're just doing anything they can and being creative to try and solve crimes. They're not necessarily accredited to any standard, and those rules aren't set for them. So it's an interesting topic because we can't do this stuff that's being done. All we can do is test the evidence for a DNA profile, and we can put it into CODIS, the national database system, which has very strict laws, and that's controlled by the FBI. When it comes to what the police officers and the detectives can do, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Backing up into your career, how did you become interested in DNA, and how long did it take you to become who you are now as an expert?
How much time do we have?
As much time as you need.
Yes.
I guess I sort of have a very interesting track because when I graduated high school and went into college, I wanted to be an interior designer.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is kind of related. It's as interior as you can get.
Yeah. Then I changed my course to biology, and which is a huge, strange change for most people. That's like two different sides of the brain that most people don't generally use both as much. But I happen to be one of those that's right down the middle, and I just thought that a biology degree would give me a better opportunity to go in different directions. It's a broader degree. I could go into teaching after that if I wanted it, not just into a science field. So I went into biology. I got my biology degree. It was a 4-year bachelor's degree. I wanted, at that point, towards the end of my bachelor's degree, I wanted to be a veterinarian. Yeah, just total changes, right? And then I made the best decision of my life, and I went and worked for a vet for a year, about about a year. And I decided, well, that's not for me. So I had a couple months after graduation to figure out what I was going to do. And a family member died, passed away at a young age. And in my opinion, and from what I know about the situation, it was a medical malpractice situation. And so that just sparked something in my mind, sparked this desire to help people that are in similar situations or to help people who have injustices. And so I decided that maybe forensic science was the thing I should do. So I found a college, a university, which is Towson University, that had that course as a master's program, and that's how I ended up there. So that was a 2-year program, and I got hired at Baltimore City right out of that degree. So I got really lucky. I got in at the right time because forensic science was just blowing up when I went into my master's degree, based off the TV shows, and everyone's just kind of learning so much about it. In the last 10 years, it's become kind of a huge field. So I've been at Baltimore City for 7 years. I graduated in 2011 and went right into working.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I have a long story, but I got there somehow.
I've always been fascinated by it. And has the field changed just in the years that you've been working for them?
That's an interesting question. I mean, minuscule changes. It takes a long time for changes to occur when you're talking about our accreditation standard. It takes a long time to have all these new techniques be researched and then be validated and then be introduced into the crime labs. So it's changed a little bit. I think probably the biggest thing is this familial searching or the genetic phenotyping. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that phrase.
Oh, yes. And that, if I remember correctly from the talk that we attended that you gave at our library, that's not accepted here in Maryland?
No, familial searching in the CODIS database is not accepted in Maryland. Genetic phenotyping is, I believe, accepted. And so we have an instrument in Baltimore City that we've been working on getting up and running for years. The problem is understanding how that's going to play into actual casework. The data that you get from it's such a hard thing to figure out how we're actually going to incorporate it into our work, because what can we do with it? Just because someone is a 90% chance that they're Caucasian with European roots doesn't mean they can't be an African American, because there's a 10% chance. So there's some issues to me. It's almost like a question of how are you profiling people? Because I consider myself a mutt when it comes to my DNA.
Like most of us.
Right. So most of us are so crossbred too now that gives a lot of information, but just because it says I'm more likely to have blonde hair than black hair doesn't mean I didn't dye my hair. The information it gives you is like, how do we actually use that? I'm not really sure, and I don't think we will start using it until it's more generally accepted and there's more information about it. Those private phenotyping companies that are doing it, like the Parabon Nanolab or whatever it's called in Virginia, they're private. They can do whatever they want. They have no restrictions. Whatever's public data they can use, and we can't do that. I'm not sure what we'll do with it. We'll see.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see where this all ends up eventually.
Yes, exactly.
Do you see advances coming that will narrow the percentages down so that it is more useful?
I don't know. So the thing with phenotype, some of you guys were at my speech at the library, and I talked about how we look at 24 specific locations within your DNA. Phenotyping is actually looking at your entire genotype, your entire DNA profile, everything, not just those 24 locations. It's looking at everything. It costs a lot more money to do that, a lot more time to do that, and there's all different kinds of private companies that make up these. It's hard to explain, but you think basically whatever you're looking for, you can kind of create your own. So if you want to look at just physical features, you can look at that. If you want to look at mental illness traits, you can look at that kind of thing. Just, you can kind of create these systems the way you want them to be. So they are pretty specific already, but again, like I said, we can change our looks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with police work, that's kind of what they're looking for is getting a picture of their person. And so I don't know how great that is going to work.
I guess that's always been true, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if you had an eyewitness say saw a blonde-haired woman, she could cut her hair and dye it black, like you say.
I think because of television and how much weight people put into DNA, we worry that going to restrict or maybe even eliminate the true suspects in these cases, because you just get one track minded. Oh, well, this DNA, which is 100%, says that we're looking for a Caucasian, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, 5'4", whatever. And it's like, well, who are you eliminating by doing that, by going so specific?
Right. There's a lot of 5'4" blonde hair, blue-eyed people.
Yep, exactly.
And you can wear heels. You can become taller.
Yes, you can.
We've all watched the television programs where the forensic scientist goes to the crime scene and collects the DNA, and within an hour has all the results, and they can point to the exact person that did the crime without any question. The guy is completely put away or shot or whatever. How does that vary from the real picture?
So for me, working in Baltimore